Alrighty, welcome everybody to another video here on the channel. If you don't know me by now, my name is David. I also go by MillerFootball, and today I am finally continuing my series where I'm going division by division, team by team, and pick by pick to hand out my grades for every single pick in the 2023 NFL Draft. I got halfway done and then kind of stopped for a little bit because we had another project being the team preview series that we've been uploading every couple days. I wanted to get that started, so now we're coming back to this. We've gotten a division down. The entire NFC North is done. If you want to check that out, there will be a link to the playlist with those videos in the description below. And also in the description will be a link to a playlist with the rest of the draft grades that I've already done, being the NFC North, AFC North, NFC West, and AFC West. And if it's not apparent by what you can see on your screen currently, we're moving on to the NFC East today, so our next video will be the AFC East, obviously. So if you want to check that out, or you want to see any other divisional grades, definitely make sure to subscribe down below. We're at 171 right now, I believe, and we're making the push for 200, trying to hit that by the end of the summer. And definitely make sure to leave a like down below as well, as that helps out a ton. And also, just before we get into this, a quick disclaimer. Keep in mind, I'm not an NFL GM, I'm not an NFL scout, I'm just a 20-year-old college kid with way too much free time. So if I say that your favorite player from your team's draft class is a bust and they end up being really good, by all means come back to this video and take a victory lap. But just know that I'm aware I'm not an expert, you know I'm not an expert. These are just my opinions. I spent a ton of time watching these players during the offseason, so yeah. Without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into this and start out with the Dallas Cowboys. And starting out with the Dallas Cowboys, their draft class was a mixed bag for me, because on one hand, I really like what they did on day 1 and some of their picks on day 3. Day 2, I was a little less impressed with, but we'll talk about that in a moment. We're going to start out here by talking about their first round selection at pick 26, defensive tackle Mazi Smith out of Michigan. I loved Mazi. He was one of my favorite players in the class. I love a good run-stuffing defensive tackle. Now, I will say, in terms of where I ranked him among his peers at the defensive tackle position, I was probably a little bit lower on him than most, and that's not because of him. That's because of how much I liked Keanu Benton out of Wisconsin, who made it into my top 3. But Mazi was IDL4 for me, interior defensive lineman 4. And I still had a late first round, early second round grade on him. So this is right about where I would have taken him. I would have even been okay with the team taking him earlier than this. But at 26... really good value. You're getting one of, if not the best run-stopping DTs in the class. It was kind of between him and Jalen Carter for that. He's super strong, has a great anchor. He's great at shedding blocks. For a bigger dude, his feet are incredibly quick. Like, he possesses a rare foot quickness for his size. He has these long, strong arms that he can just manipulate offensive linemen with and kind of do whatever he wants with them. He's got a really low center of gravity, and he's a space eater, which can allow him to play nose tackle, obviously, free up the linebackers to come in, or free up the edge rushers to come in against the run. And, you know, he's somebody that, like I said, will probably play nose tackle right away, probably be more of a nose tackle type, but he has upside as a 3-tech. He needs a little bit of work as a pass rusher, but Mazi's a hard worker, super smart player. Wouldn't shock me if they're able to pull that out of him and turn him into a massive piece on this defensive line. Because with the way things are trending, it's looking like Micah Parsons is going to play defensive end. You have DeMarcus Lawrence on the other side, and now you have Mazi Smith, and then Osa Odigizua. That's a scary front four. That is a really, really scary front four. So Mazi Smith is a fantastic pick for Dallas. I got to give this an A. Not quite an A+, because like I've said before, those are reserved for like the late round steals. But as far as getting a first round pick, or what first round pick they should have made, Mazi is about as perfect as they could have gotten. And then moving on to the second round, like I said, introducing the Cowboys here, I'm going to be 100% honest with you, not as happy with this pick as they took Mazi Smith's teammate, tight end Luke Schoonmaker out of Michigan. And Schoonmaker I was a lot lower on. He was tight end 11 for me. I had a 5th round grade on him. And my biggest complaint with this pick is there were plenty of good tight ends on the board, tight ends that were better. Guys like Tucker Kraft and Darnell Washington, even though I know he's got an injury thing, I don't care. The potential with him is awesome. And this wasn't really a need for them. Like, they lost Dalton Schultz, sure. But they had Jake Ferguson, who is very similar to Dalton Schultz, and looked good when he was on the field last year, so I have no doubt in my mind that Jake Ferguson can take over and be just as good as Dalton Schultz, because if we're being real, he's not the best tight end in the world. He's kind of average. So you're taking what will effectively be your tight end 2 in the second round, a guy who is an okay route runner, he's an okay blocker, he's a high-effort guy, I'll give him that, but his catch radius is underwhelming. He's going to be a 25-year-old rookie, he lacks play strength. Like I said, he's just a guy that kind of screams tight end 2. If I were to compare him to somebody, he's kind of like Foster Moreau. And are you taking Foster Moreau in the second round if you're a serious football team? Probably not. So, with all due respect to the Dallas Cowboys and Luke Schoonmaker, I'm going to give this a D. I just don't think this was a good pick. I think there were better tight ends on the board. I think there were better players on the board, players that fit your need a lot better. So I just don't see the thought process with this one. Like I said, you're taking your tight end 2 in the second round, and that's not a good move. Then we move to the third round, and another player that I was really underwhelmed with, linebacker DeMarvion Overshown out of Texas. And to me, this just screams Jerry Jones wanting a Texas guy. He just needed somebody that was playing in their backyard last year to be on the roster. And Overshown, I mean, I had him as LB10, round 4 to round 5 grade. There were just better linebackers available, namely Dorian Williams, who went with the next pick, who is a better run defender. He's bigger. He has better zone IQ. He's quicker. He's just an all-around better football player. Was taken with the very next pick. Like, I know the Buffalo Bills were thanking their lucky stars that this is the direction Dallas went. To Overshown's credit, though, he's a good blitzer. He's good at man coverage. He's got good size, good length. He's a solid athlete. He's violent. It's just he lacks play strength. He's a bad run defender in terms of diagnosing the run and shedding blocks. He lacks mass, so he's not going to stand up against offensive linemen, excuse me. And he's an overall inconsistent tackler. So I'm just not moved by the pick. This is a guy that, sure, developmental linebacker, right? I still think there were better guys on the board. If you really wanted a pure raw developmental linebacker, you could have taken D. Winters, who went to the 49ers. He was better. There were a lot of linebackers I would have taken over Overshown. Like I said, he was LB10 for me, and there weren't a lot of linebackers off the board at this point. I think 2 or 3 maybe 4. So I'm not rocking with the pick. I'm going to give this one a D-, because Dorian Williams going the next pick really, really stings, because he's just so much better than Overshown. But I will say, their next pick, 4th round, Viami Fioco out of, God, I can't remember his college for the life of me. I'll have it pop up on the screen, and I'll call myself an idiot. I want to say it was San Jose State, San Diego State, could be wrong. This was a great pick. I love Fioco to the Dallas Cowboys here in the 4th round. He was edge 28 for me. I watched 40 of them, so kind of right in the middle, maybe a little bit below average. But I had a late round 4, early round 5 grade, and this is a 26th pick in the 4th round, excuse me. So, good pick there. He was the perfect, missing piece for their defensive line after drafting Mozzie, right? Mozzie was the key. And then you get Fioco here, and he's going to be a really nice rotational defensive lineman that can move across the line as a run defender. He's super versatile. He can play 3-tech. He can play 5-tech. He's got good length. He's got active hands, a high motor, one of my favorite traits in a defensive lineman. He's a super smart run defender, has a good anchor, really physical at the point of attack. He was really productive in college. Over 100 pressures and over 20 sacks over the past 2 years. And what really stands out to me with Fioco is his ability to break down blocks. Because this isn't a dude that's going to overpower you. He's not a dude that's going to outrun you. He's just really technically refined and smart, and his ability to break down blocks and kind of make plays as a slow burner, as the play goes on, he becomes more effective. It is fantastic. Like I said, the only real downside to him is he's not the most athletic dude in the world. He's not twitchy. He's not a great athlete. He's not explosive. But as almost the 6th man of your defensive line, you're feeling great. Fioco's a perfect type of guy like that. Think Tyrone Crawford. Perfect example, right? Former Dallas Cowboy. Or even if you want to look back with Dan Quinn being in Seattle, he's not quite as good as Michael Bennett, but he can play a similar role. So I really, really like this pick for Dallas. I'm going to give this one an A. Like I said, right around when I would have taken him, perfect fit, just overall fantastic pick. And, you know, you look at the second and third round, you're scratching your head. Here in the fourth round, you make up for it a little bit. As you get into the fifth round, and they took a guy that I like because I'm a UNC guy, and that's offensive tackle Asim Richards. He was offensive tackle 11 for me, fifth round grade, obviously, and then getting into what he is as a player. He's got a lot of experience. He's got a nasty streak. He moves well, good core strength, all that good stuff. He's a good developmental lineman. Like, he needs work in pass pro, especially with his technique. But in the fifth round, you can feel confident in this guy going forward as a developmental tackle. He's going to be learning from Tyron Smith. So definitely a good pick here. Going to give this one a B+. As we get into the sixth round, we got two picks here. One I'm really excited about, and one I'm not as excited about. And we'll start out with the one I'm not as excited about, and that's cornerback Eric Scott Jr. out of Southern Mississippi. And I'm going to be honest, I didn't watch this guy before the draft, so I don't know as much about him as some of these other guys. But from what I saw, he's not a super fast corner, but he's got really good size. And he can move to safety. And we know the Dallas Cowboys are no stranger to moving corners to safety. Like, he ran a 4.71 at corner, which is probably why he fell as far as he did. So I'm not going to say I'm in love with him as a prospect, but if Dallas moves him to safety, if they saw something there, then sure. You know, I can see this working out for him. I'm going to give this one a B-. Like I said, didn't blow me away, wasn't a fantastic pick, but you know what? Sixth round, sure. And then we move to their other sixth round pick, and this one's awesome. Halfback Deuce Vaughn out of Kansas State. One of my favorite players in the draft, and not only was he one of my favorite players in the draft, but he's got a strong connection to Dallas because his dad works for the team. He was running back 14 for me at a round 4 to round 5 grade on him, and the only reason he was so low is because of his size. He was the smallest player to ever attend the NFL Combine at 5'5" and like 170-some pounds. So he's tiny, but oh my god, he packs a punch. He's a super athlete. He's really fast, has good burst, good lateral quickness. He can cut on a dime. He's a smooth route runner and has absurd acceleration. His 0 to 60 is off the charts. He's a mismatch for linebackers as a route runner. Like, a linebacker's not going to be able to keep up with this guy. He's a good route runner. He's very patient as a runner, has solid vision. He was very productive in college. And what's so great about him is he's small. So if you get him even like a small opening on the offensive line, he can slip through it and break off for a massive run. But like I said, the big issue with him is he's small. I mean, he's really, really small. And on top of that, he's somebody that hunts for contact, which is interesting when you're talking about a 5'5" running back. Take that as a positive or a negative, however you want to twist it. I'm not going to say either or. But in the sixth round, you could be getting the next Darren Sproles, the next Tariq Cohen back before he tore everything in his leg. And if that's the case, you're feeling great. If he doesn't work out, hey, you took a flyer on somebody that has a connection to the team in the sixth round. So be it, right? So I'm going to give this pick an A. I love it. I think Deuce Vaughn, in terms of pure talent, was one of the 5 or 10 best running backs in this class. It's just the size that holds him back. And then their final pick, round 7, wide receiver Jalen Brooks out of South Carolina. He's another guy that I didn't watch before the draft, but from what I could piece together in my limited watches of him after the draft, he has strong hands, he high points the ball well, he's got good size. It's just his footwork and his production are both lacking. So you're looking at a solid developmental jump ball guy, and that's solid. You know, it's the 7th round. You got to take somebody, right? You're just looking for somebody to make the roster, potentially, if not practice squad guy. And I think Jalen Brooks is that. You know, I'm going to give this one a B-, just because it's solid process in the 7th round. So, with that being said, it's tough for me to grade this class because they did get some really good impact players like Mozzie Smith and Viami Fioco, and then obviously Deuce Vaughn, who I'm a big fan of. Asim Richards can be something nice. But then I look at Schoonmaker and Overshown in round 2 and round 3, and that's really going to bring down this grade. It's tough because I want to grade this class positively because I like the picks they hit on, but I'm going to have to give this a C+. Actually, you know what? I'll give it a B-. I'll be a little generous. I'll give it a B-. It's just Schoonmaker and Overshown, man. I really can't wrap my head around it, but, you know, I think Mozzie's going to be awesome. I think Fioco's going to be awesome, and I think Deuce Vaughn's going to be awesome, so I can't hate it too much. Moving over to the New York Giants, I definitely like what they did across the board more than the Dallas Cowboys, and that started in round 1 with their first-round selection of Deonte Banks out of Maryland, cornerback. I thought this was great. He was CB4 for me, had a true first-round grade on him. And he's just a super athlete at corner. He's fast, he's fluid, really good stop-start ability, does a great job of mirroring a wide receiver's routes. He's physical, he's good in press coverage, has really good zone IQ. He's able to play well in man coverage. In fact, he ran every different type of coverage in the book at Maryland. You know, every different type of scheme, every type of formation, whatever you want from him, he has tape on it, right? And he was probably the best tackling corner in this draft class. He is able to fly up, make a play in the run game, and bring down receivers, which I love. My big issue with him is his ball skills. That's like the only thing that stands out to me. He struggles getting his head to turn around and whatnot, but I think that's very teachable. That's not something that's going to like make or break a corner for me. So I thought this was awesome. Again, if I was giving out A+ just for making a good pick, then this would be an A+, but because I'm saving those for your certified steals, this is an A. This is fantastic for the Giants that needed help at corner, and I think Banks is going to be a fan favorite very quickly, as well as one of the most impactful players on the roster. Excuse me. As we move into the second round, and they go offensive line with John Michael Schmitz, who was the second highest rated interior offensive lineman for me, had a first-round grade on him. I should say that IOL2 has a little asterisk next to it, just because I graded out Peter Skoronski as a guard. So in terms of guys who were actually playing interior offensive line in college last year, John Michael Schmitz was number 1. And he's just a super intelligent, like, gritty center. Reminds me a lot of the Chiefs getting Creed Humphrey in the second round a few years ago. Granted, I don't think Schmitz is going to be like a perennial all-pro like Humphrey seems to be, but I do think he's going to be a fantastic day one starter, and I would go as far to say this is a steal. Like I said, I thought Schmitz was easily like one of the 15, 20 best players in the class. I would have taken him in the first round. If the Giants would have taken him at 24, you know, I thought that would have been a fantastic pick, would have given that an A. So overall, you're getting a day one starter that's really going to help out your offensive line, really going to help out Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley. So I'm going to give this one an A+. Again, just a fantastic pick by the Giants. Then we get into the third round, and here's where we get a little dicey. I know a lot of people like Jalen Hyatt. I can see why. He's exciting. He's fast. I know some people thought he was even a first-round talent. That was insane to me, because I had Jalen Hyatt, who went to Tennessee, obviously, graded out as wide receiver 18. I only watched 21 wide receivers, so wasn't a huge fan, to say the least. I had a round 4 to round 5 grade on him. And like I said, there's stuff to like. He's fast, he's twitchy, he's got decent technique as a route runner. But as a whole, I mean, has a really bad release. He's really lanky, has a small route tree. He's not a quick starter off the snap, like he's really slow off the ball. He's easily redirected by corners, not even just like the super physical ones. Just anyone who can get hands on him is going to redirect them. And he wasn't very productive. You know, he had a lot of manufactured free releases in college. They were scheming him open a lot. He had 18 total snaps and 1 total catch versus press coverage in his final year at Tennessee. And there was like no real opportunities for him to go up and catch a ball against, in contested coverage, right? And I know you don't need a receiver to do that, but when I see a guy as one-dimensional as Hyatt, I can't help but think of the John Rosses of the world, right? And obviously, Hyatt doesn't have the expectations that Ross did, wasn't a top 10 pick. But I just don't love him. I mean, I have faith in Brian Dable to figure something out with him. Like I said, he's good when it comes to manufactured touches. But I'm just not a big fan, so I'm going to give this a C-. If any pick in this video is going to make me look stupid for their grade, it's probably going to be Hyatt. I'll tell you that right now, just because of how smart Dable is. But I'm trying my best not to grade solely off scheme fit, right? Because you can make an argument for any pick fitting a scheme perfectly, and Hyatt's definitely one of those. But just as a prospect, where I had him graded, my thoughts on him as a player alone, I can't give him any higher than a C-. And then we get to the 5th round, and they go from taking someone who's one-dimensional to taking someone who is a jack of all trades, a master of none, and running back Eric Gray out of Oklahoma. And he's a perfect RB2 for you. I had him rated out as my 16th halfback, had a round 5 to round 6 grade on him, so about where I would have taken him. Again, he's just kind of good at everything. He's just one of those running backs who's kind of a guy. You know, he's patient, got good lateral quickness, good ball security, solid contact balance, solid vision, solid hands. He's a deceptively good route runner. He's just not the fastest guy in the world. He's not explosive. He doesn't have a great power profile. He's not a good blocker. He's just a solid, balanced backup. You know, you want to take Saquon off the field for a few plays, let him get a breather, or, you know, prevent overworking him, which we know the Giants are very guilty of, and Eric Gray can step in and do enough. You know, and nowadays running backs are half reliant on the guys in front of them and all the other stuff in the offense anyway. So someone who's just a guy at running back can definitely have an impact on your team, definitely be a solid second running back. So I'm going to give this a B. Again, Eric Gray just isn't a superstar, but in terms of just getting a guy in the 5th round, this is definitely solid. And then we moved to the 6th round with pick 32, and they took cornerback Trey Hawkins III out of Old Dominion. And I'm going to be honest, this is another guy that I didn't get around to before the draft, but what I was able to pull together, he's a great athlete, he's good length, good run defender, really improved in coverage between 2021 and 2022, his 2 final years in college. And you're just kind of gambling on the athleticism and the upside here, and in the 6th round, that's a fantastic process. I like what Trey Hawkins brings to the field athletically, and I think if, you know, you can get Wink Martindale to kind of work his magic with him, then by all means. You know, worst case, he doesn't work out. 6th round pick, who cares, right? You took a flyer. So again, I'm going to give this one a B. You know, it wasn't a perfect, 6th round. We don't need to worry about it being a perfect pick. It was just solid. It was just all around a solid pick. Then we moved to the 7th round, first of 2 picks here, and they selected nose tackle Jordan Riley out of Oregon. And, you know, Riley's another guy that unfortunately I didn't get around to before the draft, but he's got this tall, wide frame that just allows him to take up space. He's got good length and mass to be a 2-gapper. So, you know, just kind of your run-of-the-mill nose tackle. Didn't have a lot of snaps, didn't have a lot of production, but in the 7th round, just looking for a guy who can go on the defensive line, eat up space, make everybody behind him's job a hell of a lot easier to slip by him. Good pick. Once again, going to give this one a B. Can't complain too much there. And then their final pick, safety Jarvarius Owens out of Houston. Another guy that surprisingly I didn't get to before the draft. I know a lot of people were kind of excited about him because you look at his highlight reel and he's fun. He's a really fun safety, makes a lot of highlight plays, but on a down-to-down basis, there's a lot to be desired. You know, there's a lot to work on. He's really raw. He's got good speed, good length. He's very fluid. He's just a really good project safety that you're going to give a lot of special team snaps to right away, and you can let Wink Martindale kind of mold into, you know, a contributor on your defense. So again, 7th round, good pick. Going to give this one a B+. So overall, I like what the Giants did. Jalen Hyatt's the only kind of blemish here, so to speak. And even then, I can't hate it too much because I'm sure Brian Dable will make me look like an idiot for giving him a C- here. But as a whole, I'm going to give this draft an A. I really like what the Giants did. Wasn't the best draft in the division, as I'm sure we're all aware. We'll talk about them here in a few minutes. But yeah, overall, I really like what the Giants came away with here. They got some day one starters. They got some good depth pieces. So definitely can't complain with this one. I don't understand how the NFL continues to allow Howie Roseman to run circles around them. There are 31 other GMs in the NFL, and somehow, consistently, Howie Roseman makes them look goofy. And this draft is a prime example of that. Now, I'll tell you right now, it's not the perfect draft. I do have an issue with one of their picks, but every other pick was fantastic. So jumping right into things, at pick 9, he traded up one spot, gave up a future 4th rounder to my Chicago Bears for defensive tackle Jalen Carter out of Georgia. And this is a tough evaluation, right? Because on one hand, pure talent, Jalen Carter was probably the best player in the class. But you look at the off-the-field concerns, you look at the potential maturity issues, you look at the potential issues with his work ethic that have been brought up time and time again by analysts and, you know, whoever else. And you're like, okay, this kid has the potential to be a generational defensive tackle, but he also has the potential to be out of the league in 2 to 3 years because he doesn't want it enough or he doesn't try hard enough. And look, I hate questioning a player's work ethic or their dedication to the game. I'm just relaying what everyone else is talking about, right? If I didn't bring it up, I wouldn't be doing my due diligence with this guy because it clearly is some sort of concern to a certain extent. Now, I will say he got drafted to the best environment to fix those kind of issues because you have veterans all across the defensive line who aren't going to let this kid walk in like he's the shit and he runs the show. That's not going to happen. And that's great. He's not going to walk into Philadelphia and think he's the face of the franchise because he's not. And that's great because clearly he's a little full of himself. And props to him. He's more athletic than I could ever dream of being. He's going to be more successful than I could probably ever dream of being. But as a rookie in the NFL, that's not ideal. But that being said, when you watch this guy play, it's like, holy cow. He just possesses traits that are, like I said, generational. He's got great power, great strength, great anchor, great get off, very disciplined eyes. He uses his hands incredibly well. He sheds blocks incredibly well. He's got a good pass rushing tool belt for a defensive tackle. The only complaint about him is his stamina, right? He's not a guy that's going to be on the field every single down. And for most teams, that's an issue, right? If you're spending a top 10 pick on a guy, you want him on the field as much as possible. But Philadelphia, they draft a defensive lineman every 5 minutes. So they have plenty of depth to make up for that. So they just need Jalen Carter to be out there and make those splash plays. I mean, hell, they spent a first-round pick on Jordan Davis last year, who was Jalen Carter's teammate. And now you've got the two of them reunited with Fletcher Cox in the middle. And, you've got all these talented defensive ends and edge rushers, and we'll talk about another one here in a second. Oh my God, this defensive line can be atrociously amazing. Like, atrocious to play against, amazing to be a fan of. Jalen Carter's just got to get it figured out. He's just got to show, hey, I want to be a defensive tackle in the NFL. I want to be a superstar, and he can do it. So, I'm going to give this pick an A, but I do see a world where it doesn't work out for Philly. That's like worst case scenario, being very pessimistic. I do think he'll get it together because he's in a great environment to do so. But I also don't envy the Eagles coaching staff for having to work to really get this guy where he needs to be. Now, they did him a favor with the 30th pick and selected Nolan Smith, also out of Georgia, edge rusher. And oh my God, how was he available at 30? How? It doesn't make any sense to me. I get it. He's small. Whoop-de-doo. This dude was one of the most talented players in this entire class, let alone among edge rushers. He was edge 3 for me, had him as a top 10 player, right at number 10. He was an insane athlete, ran a 4.39 40, best first step in the class, one of, if not the best run defending edge in this class. He had a high motor, has a nose for the ball, his eyes are always in the backfield, great hand usage. He has a surprisingly good bull rush, because when you think about it, force is mass times acceleration, and when you have a guy who's running a 4.39 40, that's a lot of acceleration. Not as much mass, but that's a lot of acceleration. Like I said, the issues with him is he's small, both in terms of, or all in terms of his frame, his hands, arm length, all that stuff. But we know Philly has no problem getting smaller edge rushers to work. Look at Hassan Reddick, who was one of the best edge rushers in football, arguably could have been in the Defensive Player of the Year conversation. And Nolan Smith is very similar to him, just a little more athletic. So you look at this pick and you're like, holy shit, who thought it was a good idea to let him go to Philly? Who thought it was a good idea to let him fall to 30? It blows my mind that they were able to get him. So if it's not apparent, I'm giving this an A+. Like this, even though it's a first rounder in the first round, like according to my grades, this is a steal. This is a straight up steal. So I'm giving this an A+. And then we go to the third round. At pick 65, they selected offensive lineman Tyler Steen out of Alabama. And as you can see here, he's listed as an offensive tackle, but I think he fits a lot better as an interior lineman. I'm sure Philly will come to the same conclusion, because he's not the strongest dude in the world, but he also leans a lot, but he's a really good run blocker. He has a nasty streak. He's got the frame to be a guard. So I'll tell you right now, I had him graded out as a 4th rounder, OT9. If he would have came in as a guard, if we would have known going ahead of time like he wants to be a guard, I probably would have had him as a 3rd round grade, and I probably would have given this an A. But because he came in as a tackle and I got to stay consistent, I'm going to give this a very, very high B+. So it's just slightly off, but just know I love this pick for Philly. I think it was a great selection here in the 3rd round. And then the very next pick, here's your hot take of the video, they fucked up. I do not like Sidney Brown. I can see why people like him. He's instinctive in coverage, good reaction time, he's fast, he's always around the ball. But to me, he was the 11th best safety in a weak safety class. In fact, I had a 5th round grade on him. And the big reason for that is a safety in the name is your last resort, right? If you have a safety playing deep, you want them to be able to bring somebody down if they get break into the 3rd level or pick up a route or whatever. And he can do that in coverage. But Sidney Brown might be the single worst tackling football player I have ever seen. And I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's he was taught bad technique. I don't know if it's because he has short arms. I don't know if it's an effort thing. I don't know what it is. He's got a lot of fun, like, highlight tackles where he puts a shoulder into somebody that's not looking and blows them up. But on a down-to-down basis, he really, really struggles to just wrap up and make a tackle. And as a safety, that's an issue. If he was a corner, I'd still have an issue with it, but I could stomach it. As a safety, no, absolutely not. He also isn't willing to, like, go up and challenge a running back in the hole, which, again, as a safety, you want to see, especially somebody who's playing, like, in the box in college at linebacker. It's crazy to me. He's not a disciplined run defender. He clearly has an issue reading gaps and diagnosing run plays and things like that. He's got tight hips, sloppy feet, lacks recovery speed, and he's overall just too aggressive. And if you want some numbers for the whole tackling thing, he missed 70 tackles at Illinois. 40 of them came in his final 2 years. That's a 17% missed tackle rate. That is horrible. And I see a lot of Eagles fans and a lot of non-Eagles fans saying, oh, they just replaced C.J. Gardner-Johnson. No. No, they did not. That is incredibly disrespectful to C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Sidney Brown is not C.J. Gardner-Johnson. I'm sorry. He's not. He is a good coverage safety that just can't tackle. So, with that, I'm going to give this a C-. And if they can fix this tackling issue, then sure, Sidney Brown can be really good, but it's just such an issue right now. You got some big hits that'll go on his highlight reel to go off of, and that's it. So I really don't like the pick. However, their next pick, Keely Ringo, cornerback out of Georgia. Again, another Georgia player. I don't know what is up with Howie's Georgia fetish, because they also ended up trading for DeAndre Swift, who we're not going to talk about because he's also not very good. This was a really good pick. And honestly, I think he could play safety better than Sidney Brown. Like, he was CB11 for me at a 3rd round grade on him. But you're looking at a guy who's an insane athlete, ran a 4.36 40, really good size, really good run defender, really good tackler, really good press ability. He's instinctive. He's got upside in zone coverage. He just doesn't have great ball skills. Really wasn't that good in man coverage. He got burnt quite a bit at Georgia. So you plug him in at safety. He's got the frame for it. He's got the instincts for it. He's got the mindset and mentality for it. Again, I think he would be better at that position than Sidney Brown. That's just how I feel. So I'm going to give this one an A. I think this is a great pick. And I'm going to stop harping on Sidney Brown, and we're going to keep this thing rolling. We're going to move into the 6th round here with quarterback Tanner McKee out of Stanford. This is just a luxury pick, honestly. Like, this was a weird quarterback class. I know a lot of people liked McKee. I wasn't a big fan, but I still had a 3rd round grade on him. So getting him in the 6th round is pretty good value. He's QB7 for me. He doesn't fit as like a perfect backup to Hurts, but we've seen that doesn't necessarily matter for Philly. Like, they had Gardner Minshew last year, who also wasn't a perfect Hurts backup, so it kind of is what it is. He's got good size, good height, good arm. He plays well in structure, has a good processor, he protects the ball well. The only issues with him is, like, he's a pure pocket passer, which is kind of a dying breed. He can move a little bit, but he's a pure pocket passer. He's pretty stiff in the pocket. He doesn't do a lot of movement, or doesn't have a lot of movement there. He's really not good under pressure, and his accuracy is kind of hit or miss. But as a QB3 right now, they got Marcus Mariota as their QB2. It's not bad. You know, you can carry a third quarterback for free now in the NFL, basically, so why not? He's somebody that can run an offense pretty well. Like I said, he's pretty good in structure, so you just need somebody who's going to come in and kind of keep your offense afloat, and with Philly, let your defense cook. Worst case scenario, if he's seeing the field, you're obviously in a bad spot. You'd be feeling a lot worse if it was a different quarterback. We'll put it that way. So I like this. Going to give it an A-. And yeah, we can just keep rolling along here to the 7th round, where the Eagles got another really good player in Moro Ajomo out of Texas, defensive tackle. He was interior defensive lineman 10 for me, had a round 4 grade on him. We're just looking at a really good run defender who's super powerful, good first step, good understanding of leverage and acquiring and maintaining leverage. Excuse me. He's got good length, super strong lower body. His hands are always active. He's a raw pass rusher, but there's upside there. And he's a linear athlete with tight hips. Obviously not ideal, but just as like a straight up run defending defensive tackle, which again, Philly's got like a billion of now. Really solid. And honestly, depending on how their depth shakes out, there's a world where he doesn't make the team. I don't think it's super likely, but it could happen. And if that's the case, someone else is going to pick him up and get a fantastic like third defensive tackle. So getting him in the 7th round, I think, is awesome. I'm not sure why he fell to the 7th round. I'm sure there's a reason for it. I'm just not sure off the top of my head. I haven't read anything about it. So I'm going to give that pick an A. And overall, outside of Sidney Brown, I love this draft class. This was fantastic. This was arguably the best draft in the league. I might favor Pittsburgh just because I didn't have anyone graded as low as Sidney Brown for them. But I got to give this an A+. Nolan Smith was a steal. Keely Ringo was a steal. Moro Ajomo was a steal. If Jalen Carter can get his shit together, that's a steal at 9. Like, this is almost the perfect draft class. And again, a lot of people are probably going to be higher than me on Sidney Brown. I get why. I can't stand a defensive player that can't tackle. That's like your main objective on defense, is to take the offensive players down. And Sidney Brown's just not very good at that. But anyways, as a whole, love Philly's draft class. Definitely the best in the division. And yeah, really like what they did. And finally, with the Washington Commanders, they have a draft class that doesn't necessarily excite me, but I think they made some good picks. And I'm really conflicted on their first pick, being cornerback Emmanuel Forbes out of Mississippi State with the 16th pick. And the reason I'm so conflicted is because Christian Gonzalez was right there. And we'll talk about him in my next video, as he went to the New England Patriots. But to me, Christian Gonzalez is a generational corner prospect. We saw how Sauce Gardner blew up last year. I think Christian Gonzalez is going to do the same thing, especially since he landed with Bill Belichick. But that being said, Emmanuel Forbes is the perfect fit for Washington. He really needed to be in a Fangio-style system, where it's going to be a lot of off coverage, a lot of cover for, and that's exactly where he landed in Washington. And I've seen other people talk about this, and I absolutely agree. Forbes was tough to evaluate from an objective standpoint, because if you're watching him and you're a team that is running a Fangio system or a lot of quarters, you probably have a first-round grade on him, because he fits that perfectly. However, if you're a team like the Bears or the Vikings or any other team that doesn't run a lot of that stuff, you probably have like a 5th-round grade on Forbes, if that. I tried to balance it out. I put him in the 3rd round, had him as CB10. But he's such a frustrating evaluation, because he's a 4.35 speed corner. That's great in zone coverage, super smart there. Has good length, he's very springy, has good ball skills, and he's a willing run defender. He's just so skinny. I mean, with all due respect, he's built like the stick bug from A Bug's Life. And again, this is talking about a guy that is far more athletic than I am, and will probably make way more money than I'll ever make, right? So, Me saying that shouldn't affect him too much, but if we're being real, he is kind of built like it. I think his name's Slick. I think it's Slick the Stick Bug. And he's not good in man coverage, not good in press coverage, not physical, obviously, with his frame. So, again, for a lot of teams, this would be a really bad pick, but for Washington, this is the exact type of corner you need for your defense. I will say, I am a little concerned given the hot seat Ron Rivera's on, because if he gets fired and they clean out their coaching staff, which you typically do when a head coach gets fired, there is a world where they bring in somebody who doesn't run a lot of cover for, or a lot of quarters and a lot of, off coverage and things like that. And if that happens, all of a sudden your 16th pick kind of gets thrown away. He doesn't really have a spot on your team. It's tough. It's really tough. Like I said, for now, great pick for Washington. I'm going to give it a B+ just because they did pass on Gonzalez and because I had a third-round grade on Forbes. But for Washington, I'm sure they're feeling fantastic, and they have every reason to. And another pick they have every reason to feel fantastic about is safety Jartavius Martin, also known as Quan Martin, out of Illinois. And Commanders fans, you're going to love this. Eagles fans, close your ears. This was the better safety at Illinois last year. I had a round 2 to round 3 grade on Martin, safety 3 for me behind Brian Branch and JL Skinner. He's a super athletic guy, ran a 4.46. He's a fantastic tackler. I mean, he's the opposite of Sidney Brown when it comes to bringing down ball carriers. He is fantastic. Missed over just 5% of his tackles in his career. He's got super strong arms, good ball production. He's a great backpedaler. Played very well in man coverage. He has good reactionary quickness, oily hips, nimble feet. He's super versatile. I mean, people talk about it all the time. Players who played safety and corner in college in these cover 4 schemes make great slot corners and safeties when they transition to the NFL. And that's what Martin is. I mean, he could be the starting slot corner day 1, right? Absolutely could. And if he's not, then he's going to be challenging those other safeties in Washington, Forrest and Cam Curl, for their jobs very quickly. I think Cam Curl's getting pretty close to contract time. If they don't want to pay him, Quan Martin can step up right away and take over. I have no doubt in my mind. I will say, he's a little bit slender. Not quite Forbes slender, but he's a little skinny. And his own IQ can use some work, but that's something you can teach, right? Ron Rivera is a super smart coach. He knows defense. He can, you can teach that. So, I love Quan Martin. He's one of my favorite players in the class. I think he fits very, very well in Washington and should be an impact player day 1. So I'm going to give this an A. Love the pick. Love the pick. Eagles fans, I'm sorry your team decided to draft his inferior teammate. And then we move to back-to-back offensive line picks with Ricky Stromberg and Braden Daniels. Ricky Stromberg, I didn't watch before the draft, I'm going to be honest. But he's just a solid center. He's got good technique. He's just not the biggest guy, not the most athletic guy, not the strongest guy. But, in a pinch, he can be a good starter. I think he's a really nice backup for you, which taken in the 3rd round, I don't love. So I'm going to give this a B-, but solid pick at least, right? Definitely can have a role. And then Braden Daniels is kind of the opposite, where he's just really athletic. Not super strong, which is, I'm hoping they're playing him at guard over tackle. They did announce him as a guard at the draft, so that makes me a little excited there. But he's a good run blocker, and I think he can be a good developmental interior offensive lineman. So again, I'm going to give him a B-. Just 2 solid back-to-back offensive line picks. Then we get to the 5th round, and another pick I liked quite a bit is edge rusher KJ Henry out of Clemson. I think he fits very well for what Washington needs, right? You have Montez Sweat, who's been balling out. You're hoping Chase Young can get back to what he was supposed to be, or at least part of that. I know he's had a lot of injuries and whatnot. He just declined his 5th-year option. But if that's the case, then KJ Henry can be a fantastic rotational edge. He was edge 27 for me, had a late round 5, early round 6 grade on him. He's just a high-effort player that's very technically sound. He can win inside, he can win outside. He has a nice tool belt. He strings his moves together very well. He's a good run defender. He's one of those guys that has a high floor but a low ceiling, right? He doesn't have the athletic tools to be a freak of nature or a superstar. He's a little bit smaller, but as a day one rotational edge, you're feeling pretty good about him. He can definitely make an impact on your defensive line. So I'm going to give this a B+. I like the pick for Washington. If Chase Young can get back to form or at least look like a starting caliber edge, then KJ Henry's going to have a really nice role there and can definitely make an impact. As we move into the 6th round, they took Chris Rodriguez, the running back out of Kentucky, and I think this is really fitting, because to me, this is Brian Robinson light. I had a 6th round grade on him. He was my 19th rated halfback. He was really productive in college. He's a physical back with good contact balance. However, unlike Robinson, he is light on his feet. He's not quite as powerful. He's a little more shifty. He's got a slender lower half, but despite that, he has really good leg drive. He has good football IQ, really solid vision, always fighting for yards, built big. He's always carrying the pile, and he's good in short yardage situations. There could be some character issues here. He got arrested for was at least charged with a DUI, given a DUI. So not ideal, but kids make mistakes, right? Maybe something to look into, maybe not. I don't know. Just felt like it was worth mentioning. He's just not super explosive, not a great pass blocker. So is your second running back. Sure, right? Give Brian Robinson some air, let him carry the ball. Can't be mad at that. So I'm going to give this one a B+. And then finally, their last pick, Andre Jones, the edge rusher out of Louisiana. Gonna be honest, not somebody I watched before the draft. But I probably wouldn't have given him a draftable grade after I watched him. Wasn't really productive. Wasn't a good run defender. Not athletic. Not the strongest guy in the world, and then he couldn't test because he hurt his hamstring. Maybe that would have helped, maybe not, I don't know. It's the 7th round. You're just trying to take a guy, maybe somebody that can make the roster, so can't be too mad about it, but I am going to give this a C-. It's kind of whatever. It's really not going to impact their overall draft grade, if we're being honest here. But as a whole, like I said, I thought the Commanders had a solid draft. Nothing that blows me away, nothing that gets me super excited outside of Martin. So I'm going to give it a B. I thought it was a solid draft. Just, you know, you got some guys, and you're hoping that you can figure out a way to make them work, as you do with drafts in the NFL. But yeah, that's going to do it for my NFC East draft grades video. I hope you all enjoyed. Definitely make sure to let me know down in the comments below what you think about these teams' draft classes. If you're a fan of this team, let me know if you're happy with what your team did. If you don't agree with what I had to say, please let me know. I'm more than willing to engage in dialogue. It's always a ton of fun talking ball. And of course, like I do for all these videos, if I had to pick a favorite player from each of these classes, for Washington, I got to go with my boy Quan Martin. For Dallas, probably go with Deuce Vaughn, maybe Mozzie Smith. It's one or the other. I'm kind of torn picking a favorite there. With the Giants, got to go with John Michael Schmitz. And then, of course, for the Eagles, I got to go with Nolan Smith. Still can't believe they got him at 30. But yeah, that's going to do it for this video. Definitely make sure to leave a like down below, as that helps out a ton. And definitely make sure to subscribe, because like I mentioned at the beginning of the video in the intro, we got a ton of fun content coming your way, talking to a bunch of fans of different NFL teams, including fans of the NFC East. But yeah, with all that being said, to everyone out there watching, I hope you all have a wonderful day, evening, night, afternoon, whatever time of day it is for you. I hope you enjoy it, because you're all wonderful people and you deserve it.